It's live stream and my record is a backup. And as usual, call me if you need me.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. This is the meeting of the Sanitation and Environmental Protection Committee meeting. It is 7:02 p.m. At this point, we are still waiting for a couple of committee members, so we would like to turn it over to our friends from Propel, who have a presentation for us this evening. And yeah, welcome.
That's it. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Should we share our presentation ourselves, or is that something that you want to bring up? I just want to make sure we're following proper protocol.
Bear with me, I pulled it up earlier. Can you see that or no?
No, all I see is your desktop.
So you're having problems pulling up the presentation?
Yeah.
I can share it if that helps.
Sure.
Okay, let me try to share it.
You should stop sharing though, Cynthia.
Going to Naya. There.
And of course, it's not letting me share. Ellie, do you
Well,
want
hold on, I'll
try?
make you a presenter or whatever.
We have other folks that might be able to pull it up too. I don't.
Yeah, I can try if that doesn't work.
All right, so try it now, Shannon.
Okay.
So while we wait for that technical glitch to be resolved, my name is Cynthia Rodriguez. I'm the chair of Bronx Community Board 11.
I'm Wendy Hewlett-Betts, board member.
June Nakamba, board member.
And we have Robert Press visiting us this evening. And
Jose Rodriguez from Palm St. John's, representing the Propel Team New York.
thank you. Any luck on your end?
No.
Let me see if I can do this again.
Let me try.
Even the computer doesn't start, right? They want to be on vacation.
Sometimes.
It's still on vacay mode.
As long as Mercury is in.
Oh, yes.
There we go. I see something.
Is that working?
Yes. Thank you, Ellie.
Okay, great. No problem.
Ellie, to the rescue.
Yeah, I was just
And you
making it
guys
full
can
screen.
see
Yeah,
it full screen or?
I
Yeah,
think
make
if
full
you need to hit full screen, Ellie, up in the settings, the view settings.
Wait, it might be I'm using two screen. Is this better?
No.
No.
Because we can see your toolbar and everything. Should be.
Yeah, usually, like she said, click on view at the top, the tab, view tab. Right next to home. For that.
I'm using the browser. It's a little bit different, I think, the setting. 1 second.
You'd think we'd have this all figured out. We only do virtual presentations a million times a day.
Is this any better?
No, it hasn't changed.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess as long as we can see it, right? Yeah, it
Yeah.
shouldn't-
And I think we sent the copy to Jeremy, but we can
Yes.
always follow up with additional information if it's something's hard to see on the screen.
I mean,
No,
I can, if you want, I can try. I'm just not going to be able to stay on. I can try to pick up the PDF you sent.
no, Jeremy, I don't think we can see it. So, and we have the printout in front of us. I don't
Okay.
think,
Okay.
I don't think we need yeah.
Yeah,
don't-
I printed 10 copies off for whoever's
Yeah,
interested.
Okay.
don't-
All right, great. Well, then we can get started if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Shannon Back-Savanas. I'm with New York Transco, one of the developers that is advancing Propel New York Energy. We really appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you this evening to give you an overview of the project and answer any questions you might have about the project. I am joined by a few of my colleagues. I will just share their names in the interest of time. Ellie Zong and Kathleen Marine, who are with us from WSP, which is our engineer of record on the project, as well as Phil Ellison, who is from the New York Power Authority, our co-collaborator on the project. So if we could go to the next slide, just to give you a little bit of information about the development of the project. Propel New York Energy is the name of the project. It is an electric transmission project, all underground facilities. We'll go through the details and components of the project in just a second, but to give you a bit of background on who is developing this project, it's a collaboration between the New York Power Authority and New York Transco. The New York Power Authority is the largest public power utility in the US. They do generation facilities, they do transmission projects like Propel, and they provide a significant amount of clean power for the state. New York Transco, we are a private developer. We own and operate transmission throughout New York State as well. We're a really skilled team coming together to develop and ultimately get to the point of constructing Propel New York Energy. And we're happy to answer any questions about either of the companies, but let's just jump right into some of the content of what we're going to be doing. So as I mentioned, Propel New York Energy is an electric transmission project. It is not battery storage, it is not offshore wind or any other generation type project, and it's not tied to a single source of power. We are an electric transmission project, which is the backbone of the energy delivery network in New York and throughout the United States. We're a project that will bring significant benefits to the region and specifically to the Bronx, which we'll detail in just a moment. But I did just want to make clear, electric transmission is sort of that intermediary piece in the energy delivery network where you have generation on the one end, that's the power plants, that's wind, solar, where energy is really created. And then you can think of transmission kind of like the highways of the energy delivery, where it's moving lots of power long distances to ultimately get to the distribution system, which is what brings power to homes and businesses every single day. We're often the forgotten about piece in the energy delivery network. We go to the next slide. Transmission, while often forgotten about, is really important to the overall sustainability of our communities. It's critical to our public safety and health, and it really is the thing that gets our economy going. Key thing about New York's electric transmission system, while there are about 11,000 miles of it throughout the state, much of it is aging. We have about 80% of New York's transmission system entered into service before 1980. And it's a core piece of infrastructure that, even though we don't think about it, we are relying upon it every day. So the state is undergoing a lot of initiatives to bolster that system, to build out that system for both our climate needs and to make sure our environment is sustainable for the long term, for economic needs, as well as for our general health, safety, and well-being. If we go to the next slide. So why are we in front of you today? Well, it really stems from a process that started back in March of 2021. The New York State Public Service Commission, which is the organization, the state agency that handles electric transmission needs across the state, they regularly look at the state's electric transmission system and network and identify where there are needed improvements. And back in March of 2021, they identified a need in the downstate electric transmission system. That's what you see on the map in front of you, is a little snapshot of the electric transmission system in downstate. And you can see that there are bubbles of red and blue on that map. Those indicate areas of congestion or pinch points where the system is overloaded and power cannot flow efficiently, effectively, or economically to ultimately where it is consumed. So the Public Service Commission said this is a problem, this causes prices to increase, this limits our ability to move more power, clean power on the system, and it threatens reliability and resiliency of the system. So they asked the New York Independent System Operator, or NYISO, who manages the grid throughout the state, they asked them to conduct a competitive solicitation to get solutions for this challenge. And over the course of a 2-year evaluation period, the NYISO looked at 19 different proposals from 4 different developers and ultimately selected Propel New York Energy as the more efficient or cost-effective solution to relieve this congestion, to build out the pathways to move more clean energy around, and ultimately bolster the reliability and resiliency of the transmission grid. So now how will we do all of that? We'll do that by building approximately 90 miles of new underground and submarine transmission lines across portions of Nassau County, Suffolk County, Queens, Bronx, and Westchester County. You can see those new lines denoted by the different colors on the map. These are mostly what are called underground 345 kV lines. That kV is kilovolt. That refers to the voltage of the lines. And there's one that is a 138 kilovolt line on Long Island. Obviously, for the purposes of today, we're going to focus on that dark blue line between the existing EGC substation in the town of Hempstead in Uniondale and crossing through parts of North Hempstead and ultimately coming into Queens, crossing the East River and coming into the Bronx to terminate at the existing Tremont substation. Once all of this project is built, which we have about a 4-year construction window that we have proposed, we're looking to get this operational in May 2030. It'll start bringing benefits to the region and the state at large. So if we could go to the next slide, we'll zoom in a little bit on that dark blue line. So as I noted, this dark blue line starts in the town of Hempstead in Uniondale at an existing substation. It crosses through a little bit of the town of Hempstead, then it crosses into the town of North Hempstead on Long Island. Then we cross into Queens. We have about an 8-mile stretch through Queens, and then we cross the East River and ultimately come up into the Bronx and Ferry Point Park. And we'll talk to you about the specifics of that East River crossing and the park information in just a moment. But as you can see here, we're proposing a total of about 4 miles of new underground transmission lines crossing through portions of the Bronx. And we eventually go through different city streets to ultimately come into the existing Tremont substation that is owned by Con Edison. And the street names are noted on the map. We do have these detailed maps on our website, which is propelnyenergy.com. There's a section called In Your Region, and all of the maps for all of the transmission lines that are proposed are on there, including this specific one for the Bronx. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to pass it over to Kathleen, who's going to talk about the different construction methods that we have proposed to use to install the project. And then she'll also talk to you a little bit about that East River crossing between Queens and the Bronx. Go ahead, Kathleen. Kathleen, we can't hear you. In the interest of time, I will do this slide while Kathleen figures out her audio issues. But one of the main types of construction methods that we will use for the bulk of the project is traditional underground utility construction, where you would take a segment of the public roadway and you would open a trench, and then we would install the equipment inside the trench. And then everything gets put back, restored to prior to or better than prior to condition. This is about a 5.5-inch cable, and you can see we have 3 of those cables that would be installed under the roadway. And this again is very similar to what you've seen for utility construction in the past, whether it's water, sewer, or electric transmission or distribution. We would have traffic management plans that would take care of any traffic needs for both the traveling public in vehicles as well as cars. We have to coordinate with public safety officials to make sure that we have all proper protocols in place, as well as schools, any transit authorities. So there's a lot of coordination that goes on related to this type of construction to minimize impacts to the local community. I think Kathleen's got her audio working, so I'm going to pass it over to her to talk about another type of construction method that we're going to use specifically in a couple of places in the Bronx. So Kathleen, go right ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you all for bearing with me. Quick overview of this trenchless technology. There are several versions of trenchless technologies, and we're specifically looking at the horizontal directional drill called the HDD. So as you can see on the slide, this is a pretty standard trenching or trenchless installation method since the 70s, and it's used to avoid surface disturbances in sensitive areas. So some examples you can see on the screen: if you wanted to go under some trees or a wetland or a stream, or even buildings, parking lots, etc., you can literally drill and tunnel underneath these features and then surface on the other side. So as Shannon mentioned, there are a couple of horizontal directional drills that are proposed within the Bronx. Ellie, next slide, please. So first, we're going to start with the East River crossing. On the south side, or the bottom of the image, is Queens, top being Ferry Point Park and the Bronx. So this is the first horizontal directional drill crossing that we're going to talk about today. So this will, it's an approximately 4,500 foot crossing. So again, drilling underneath into the bedrock of the East River so that there is no actual in-water effect during construction or even disturbance of the river bottom. So no impacts to marine users in this area during the installation or during the horizontal directional drill and installation. So the way this works is that the drill is going to launch from Francis Lewis Park in the south, at the bottom of the picture, in that kind of pink polygon area. So that's the workspace. And then it's going to follow that orange line diagonally underneath the Whitestone Bridge, again doing a big U underneath the river, and it's going to daylight in Ferry Point Park. So the receiving site where the drill is going to daylight is inside or within the cricket fields. The work area there is approximately 1.5 acres, and the shape of it is somewhat flexible. So that's just sort of a representation of a standard where we would start the work area shape. The site, and then once the drill is actually daylighted, that workspace is going to start shrinking for the remainder of the drilling, the HDD activities. And we are proposing to access this location in Ferry Point Park from the Hutchinson River Parkway, and then using existing paths, and then partially developing a temporary access road within the Ferry Point Park itself. As you can see on the screen, it crosses underneath the Whitestone Bridge, so we are in communication with the MTA for this crossing. Next slide, please, Ellie. Okay, the second horizontal directional drill in the Bronx is then going underneath Westchester Creek. So on the right side of the screen is Ferry Point Park. On the left side of that image in the screen is Zarega Avenue on the west side of Westchester Creek. So same technology. We're going to start, but this time we're going to start in on Zarega Avenue on the west side in an industrial lot. And then the drill is going to launch again underneath Westchester Creek, not disturbing the creek at all. And then it's going to daylight in Ferry Point Park on the east side. So the primary workspace for this specific crossing of Westchester Creek is primarily on within the industrial area of the industrial lot identified on Zarega Avenue. And then the receiving side in Ferry Point Park, as you can see, is right by the soccer fields, and there's a little barbecue area. And that receiving area workspace in Ferry Point Park is only about 0.3 acres. And again, we'll be using access to that space in Ferry Point Park, coming right off of the Hutchinson River Parkway and utilizing existing footpaths as much as possible. And I believe, oh yeah, this is me still. So what are we doing to minimize impacts, particularly in Ferry Point Park and in general in the Bronx and all along the project route? So we have been working with New York City Parks and also, you know, with our engineers to continue to further design to minimize impact to all trees so that we can avoid tree removal or damage or anything to trees as much as possible. We're also avoiding built recreational facilities. So for instance, if there were any playgrounds or buildings within Ferry Point Park, like the bathrooms, you know, we're prioritizing use of open fields that can be easily and quickly restored to maintain use by the public. And then also to minimize impacts with users of the parks, we're looking at construction in Ferry Point Park in the off season. So when use is at a low period for the year. And we're also looking that this construction, specifically within Ferry Point Park, would span a couple of years. So that would be utilizing, again, these off-season periods so that we can continue to minimize impacts to users. And the motto that we have as part of the project is that we restore to previous conditions or better once the project is complete. So we are looking at, you know, any disturbance that happens within the park or beyond the parks is going to be restored. So yeah, I guess Shannon, do you want to cover the synergies?
So part of the effort that we're undertaking and why it's so great to be speaking with you all is with this information to see if we can come up with ideas that we can find synergies, you know, opportunities to make certain improvements during our restoration process, maybe things that we didn't think about or some outside of the box ideas. We want to kind of put everything on the table to figure out what the best approach is for restoration and in construction in general. So we welcome any thoughts you might have. And then also we know that the parks are beloved areas. In the community is a vibrant community, and we're looking for ways in which we can share information about the project to learn more about community priorities, to find out if there are community ideas that we can incorporate into the project, and really try to learn as much as we can about these areas, since we will be long-term neighbors once these projects are built and operational. So just some ideas that we can, you know, talk about at a later date, but we'll leave those with you. But that is something kind of consistently that we will be bringing up in future discussions. If we go to the next slide, just to give a sense of timing, this is a long process that projects like this take to ultimately be realized. We've simplified a very long duration timeline into these 4 main steps, really 5 steps. We're at step 3, which is permitting at this point. There's a significant amount of permitting that the project has to go through in order to obtain approvals to construct the project. The core permit that we need to get is called an Article 7. This is through the New York State Public Service Commission, and it is a robust process for a project like ours. I'll talk about it in just a second. But once we go through that and other permitting and have all approvals in hand, We're hoping to start construction in mid-2026. And then we have about 4 years of work to do in order to get the project in service for May 2030, which is a required in-service date. So while it's 4 years of total construction, it doesn't mean that we would be in any one area for 4 years. We will have very detailed construction plans with sequencing, and that will be regularly communicated out to the community and all of the neighbors as we go through the process of construction. So let's go to the next slide. The Article 7 I mentioned, this is the key permit that we need from the New York State Public Service Commission. This is a permit that's required for electric transmission projects like Propel New York Energy. Again, it is conducted through the New York State Public Service Commission, but it is set as a one-stop shop for all state agencies, all municipalities, all interested parties to participate in that project to ultimately help shape and affect the outcomes of the project. It's a very robust process. It includes all environmental review for the project. It includes detailed engineering and design reviews. So this is really the place where all of the details get worked out so that we can construct the project. We are at the early stages of this process. We just submitted our application to the Public Service Commission at the end of July. The application as it stands today is about a little over 6,000 pages. It includes a number of exhibits that look at environmental impacts, that look at all of the engineering and design components. It looks at the construction methods that we talked about today, and a whole host of other topics, including our proposed routing. But again, our proposed routing is available on our website as well. Once we get through this process, this is really the key thing that we need in order to get into construction for that mid-2026 timeline. You can see the case number. We've listed it on here. This is all available on our website. If folks are interested in looking at anything within the docket, we're happy to help direct you to a topic of whatever your interest might be. And we're happy to help kind of walk you through that process because it is quite large and cumbersome. If you go to the next slide, as we kind of talked about before, one of the big things we want to do with this project is really engage with the community, as well as all of the stakeholders that are impacted by the project. This is a large project. We know that it's a lot of information to take in, so we look forward to maintaining a dialogue with all of the stakeholders. We have been doing outreach for quite some time now. We hosted public open houses in May and June, and we will continue to look for forums to get out there and chat with neighbors that abut the project, talk to local businesses, the municipalities, and really share as much information as we can about the project and take back as much feedback as we can about the project. This will be a project built by New York State Union Labor, so one of our key stakeholders as we work through this process, which again, we're still in the early phases of. We do have a toll-free hotline, an email address, and a website where we can take public comments at any time or questions or chat with folks if they want more information. Again, the website is a wealth of details on there about the project and our process. And we're here to help if there's anything that folks are interested to learn more about. One thing we have been doing and will continue doing is sending direct mail pieces out to all of the neighbors along our proposed route. So folks in the Bronx have been receiving mail from us. This includes letters about the project, postcards. It'll be a whole set of notices related to the Article 7 process. And again, those will be posted on our website as well. If we go to the next slide, just to kind of close things out and get to your questions. The benefits of this project are huge. It's a multi-value project. We are building out the electric transmission grid, which is critical for improved reliability and resiliency. We're really creating the pathways for more clean energy to flow, and doing so in a way that boosts local economies, helps support local jobs, and advances the state, the region, and the city's environmental goals. So we're excited to be here. We're excited to be moving a project that is an investment now, but will benefit for the future to come. And we are happy to take any questions you might have about the project or any other components that we talked about today.
Well, I want to say thank you for the presentation. I was jotting down just some things. And one of the questions that I have, just to kind of break it down for us, the community, what's the real benefit, right? I know, we've had brownouts, blackouts, storms. I know we're talking about adding additional units, housing units and things of that nature. We know that that sucks up more energy. Con Edison has gone up, tremendously on their bill, 11%, and then go. So how would a tenant, right? Someone who's paying Con Edison and a homeowner, because as we see, they're passing the solar
Yes.
roofing now. So how could we benefit? What's the incentive for us?
So there's a lot of different elements to answer that question. But I think the biggest thing is, as we electrify more things in society, as we plug in more devices, we have heat pumps in homes, people use electric cars. As we increase our demands on the electric grid, we need to build out the infrastructure to support that. Otherwise, we could find ourselves in challenging situations, to your first point that you made. So the biggest benefit is making sure that the system is reliable and resilient, so that when you flip on whatever device, you know that your power is being delivered to you. That's first and foremost. That gets into community health, that gets into public safety, a whole host of elements. I would say the second thing is, this is a project that brings a lot of economic growth, supports a lot of economic growth. Specifically, the project supports about 2,000 jobs annually during the 4-year construction period, and boosts the local economy as well. So I'd say that's a secondary component of it. I know that projects like this are hard to kind of wrap your mind around. These are big infrastructure projects, but they yield a lot of big benefits. It's just not something we're always thinking about each day.
Yeah, I get that. I guess you're right about one thing. It's a lot of information to process. I just go back on what's the saving, what's the incentive for a homeowner, someone who's paying Con Edison? As it pertains to kids who don't have internet access, things like that involve energy, right? What is the benefit? Because I'm hearing the benefit on the corporate end, and I'm what's my mind is telling me, the infrastructure plan. This definitely may be something that's in it because the money is there, and that's fine. But when it comes down to a community, how do we benefit from that? What's the incentive? Are we going to get a break as it pertains to our bills? And then when, what avenues will be worked on? How will that affect transportation? Those are the little tidbits that we have to know within the community. I get the corporate side of it, and that's huge and great for you guys. But when we look at the community, we have to say, what is the incentive and how is it going to affect our everyday living and savings?
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's a little too simplistic to probably think of it in this way, but we wouldn't want to harken back to the time when a lot of these things were built, which you're looking at the 60s, 70s, 80s, when the last time there were big improvements. And you think about in our daily lives, how much has changed from those years. We don't really have the electric grid to deal with all of those changes, particularly new ones that are being added on. And this affects all of us on a day-to-day basis. Again, it's just not something you think about. It's not like riding the subway, which you see that and you would see an improvement. This is something that's a little bit less tangible, but is critical to our everyday lives. We just don't, it's not at the forefront in our thought process.
No, I get that, Shannon. I get that. But again, that benefits the city, right? I mean, yes, we know our systems need updating. We know, especially with Con Edison, piping hasn't been updated since the 1800s or early 1900s, rather. We know that. We understand that, especially once you start developing more, right? Because a lot of our land, that were not developed on are now being developed on, and you need energy, you need the power to run through that. I get that, and I understand that. And maybe you can't necessarily answer my question at this point in time because it's early in the game, but the question is, how do we as the community, how can we benefit? How will we see the benefits in our day-to-day life, in our bills, right? And we may not, right? And that's the answer. We may not. This is part of upgrading the infrastructure.
Yes.
And that's cool. Let us leave with that. So
It's right. It's core infrastructure.
when the community asks, and I'm we're not the first community board you're gonna go to, right? But when a
No,
community
several.
asks, what's the incentive? Your response needs to see there is none, right? This is only upgrading a system that needs massive upgrading for over 80 something years, 100 years. Anything else?
No, that was my comment.
I have something else. Just to piggyback with what Ms. Betts was saying, the city stands to benefit from this, but the immediate, the tenants, the homeowners that would be impacted on a daily basis by this upheaval in their neighborhoods, how will they benefit from it? Also, I was taking some notes as you were going along. So as you said, if you do the underground construction, every time when you look at a building that's being built up, you see the sediment and the dirty water coming through your pipes and your kitchen pipes and the bathroom pipes and the toilet from the water that's being dredged up. And all the sedimentation that's being loosened by this building and shaking. So we're gonna have that. You're also gonna have traffic blockage. I also wanted to ask, I'm looking here at this horizontal directional drilling. What do you call a sensitive area? Avoid disruption to sensitive areas. And why in particular did you run it through the Bronx? How can Bronxites benefit from this when we will be directly impacted by this? Financially, time-wise, environmental-wise, every page that I went through, you're drilling through bedrock. Now, I'm not sure where our fault lines are. We just had a big earthquake that just happened, right? So is this gonna be shaking anything? Is this gonna be moving anything, disturbing anything? You're disturbing thousands of years of the earth. So that's another thing. What about the ecosystems that are gonna be disturbed by this? You're going underneath over the the White Stone Bridge.
Yeah.
So that's Fort Totten to the other side. That's a lot of area. That's right connected to the Long Island Sound, everything. You have a lot of ecosystems that are living in that water that are going to be disturbed by this. I didn't hear anything about that. You also said that the exit point is gonna be near the barbecue and the soccer field. That's something that comes to my mind because what would be the possible negative effects to humans with the pipeline and the electrical grids that will affect us in the long term? The ecosystem, the tree, the humans, the animals.
Yeah.
You're talking about massive amounts of electricity going underneath these grounds, and this is where we're living on. So we're feeding the city, but it's underneath our garages. It's underneath our floor. You understand? So, and the other part was, who is betting this? Who are betting the companies that's going to do this? You said 2030, it's required for in-service. So this massive infrastructure that's going to take place, who's betting the company that's going to do it? And are any of the smaller companies in the Bronx going to get any money from this, or jobs, or anything like that?
Every time to.
Yeah, what's the benefits from that?
Another question.
And that question is not being answered.
And I didn't hear you say anything about, you said there's gonna be 2,000 jobs that are gonna come from this. How many Bronxites are gonna get hired?
Yes.
So we, for the job side of things, for the construction contractors, which I think was the question, that goes through competitive procurement processes, and we go through a rigorous evaluation of those folks that will eventually bid in. We have not started that process yet. That will likely not begin until next summer at the earliest. And we would obviously be looking at safety first in terms of the review of those potential contractors. And then there'll be a whole host of different elements that we'll be looking at. including the local components for hiring. This will be union built, so local New York State union would deliver this. The skilled union folks would deliver this project, but we haven't reached that point yet in the process. That would be, again, starting at earliest, potentially next summer. So we would vet those companies between the New York Power Authority and New York Transco through that competitive bidding process. It would likely be more than one company hired to do this, given the scope, scale, and the time frame by which we have to construct all of this and put it in service.
So let me answer what she said. Oh, let me finish later. This project sounds like a very specific type of trade job, right? So it's a STEM type thing, right? So they would need people that are certified within environmental or this specific trade. I don't know if, now, as it pertains to the Bronx, one idea that you could possibly do is link with some of the local colleges who may have the environmental programs, right? And do it like an internship or some type of apprenticeship.
Yes.
That way Bronxites are trained and a part of this, are involved with this. Because this is very specific where a certain level of education is needed, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, construction where it's like, oh, I'll train you and, you know, to do this particular thing. This is very intricate. So our suggestion would be to link with a local college and get with the program, right?
Yes.
And kind of blend that together and making sure that it's Bronxites.
And in the future, they'll
You know,
Get to the job.
work.
yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, 1 second.
questions?
Yes, go on.
Okay, having dealt with something like this twice, the water filtration plant in Van Cortlandt Park, the jobs went to, you know, people in the union. Local people got security guard jobs. That's it.
They're not making.
We had a 500 million watt line come through from Con Edison through Community Board 8 when I was there. And is there going to be any insulation on these wires, as Con Ed did on that megawatt line? Second is, are you taking energy from the Tremont Avenue substation and moving it over to Hempstead, or Hempstead to Tremont? Because I know the Long Island Power Authority is short on power. They need more power. So are you taking it from the Bronx to Long Island?
So I'll answer that question first. These lines are bidirectional lines, meaning power can flow in different directions. So it's not a single, it doesn't go just a single way. We don't control how the power moves around or how it's dispatched. That's something that the New York Independent System Operator will do for this project and does across New York State. So they would look at what available generation is out there, where there are certain demands or needs, and then they would accordingly dispatch the power onto the lines. So we couldn't answer which way power would be fed. That's up to them, but it can go in both directions.
Because you're having two different prices. Long Island Power is higher than Con Edison, as a matter of fact. Now, second, for the parkland, are you aware that it's alienation of parkland that has to go through the state? No, it doesn't.
No, I'm shaking
Oh.
my head just to shake my head.
That has to go through the state assembly for alienation of parkland.
So for the New York City parks, it's actually going to go through revocable consent.
That's something. If you're alienated for 3 years, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to deal with the city elected officials and the state elected officials.
I think just to kind of piggyback, one question that you may have to answer when it comes down to why it comes through the Bronx is that the Bronx is unique because it has the connection to Long Island and Westchester.
Yes.
So when you took, you know, that may be a question that other Bronx community boards are going to ask you, right? Why the Bronx? And I think one thing about us right now is that you have to be as transparent as possible, right? Because this is where the community can kind of turn on you if you're not 100% transparent. Even if the answer is ugly, the fact that you answered it and it was transparent. So I don't know if I would, it's just me, right? And my knowledge is saying Bronx, Westchester, Long Island, of course, the lines are connected. It feeds, right? We just have to make sure that we're not taking from us to give to others. That we're all in the same pool, getting the same benefits. And I think that's where it comes the initiative, right? The incentive, rather, is we know Long Island is gonna get an incentive. We know Westchester is gonna get the incentive. But when it comes down to the Bronx, what's the incentive? Because we can
When you refer to an incentive, could you elaborate on that? Because I'm not clear what incentive you're referring to.
So incentive can be anything. For instance, when we just talked about the workers, right? It would be an incentive to my Bronx people if they could be a part of this project, right? If they could work this project, that's one form of incentive. An incentive could be anything. It's just something that the Bronx is gonna benefit other than, improving our lives, right? So I think that's where we have to get really creative with the package.
Yeah, just one more question. You're also gonna have to deal with low bidders, from what I understand, which is what Con Edison did, as well as in their gas lines and in their electric lines. And with low bidders, you sometimes get substandard work. As Con Edison found when they first started the high pressure gas lines, that the contractors weren't using enough adhesive to the pipes, and the pipes were coming apart, and work had to be redone. Do you anticipate any work having to be redone?
I don't anticipate any work being redone. That's sort of hard for me to answer, but no, we would not. Obviously, we would be looking to hire the most skilled construction contractors, again, utilizing New York State Union labor to advance the project. We've done it before on other projects across the state. So that track record is something that we bring to this project.
Well, we don't see any track record here where you've been, because again, once you cut into the foundation of a New York City street and then try and place dirt and then tar on top of it, that street will collapse again, as it happens at many sites where that's been done. Okay, so unless you're gonna lay a new foundation along with the old foundation, the road is just gonna come down a little on top of your lines, as it's done on the Con Edison lines and pipes.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone online who has any questions for the speakers or any comments for gallery?
Hi, good evening. It's Kay Cardona. How's everyone?
Hi, Kay.
Good evening.
Hi. Couple of things, and this is for the folks who made the presentation. During the pandemic, I started doing a lot of online meetings, and I was following Food and Water Watch and the Bronx River Alliance with their Greenway meetings and stuff. And I understand about local law 97, about moving away from fracking and emissions, the amount of emissions and stuff, and how burning fossil fuels, like the large buildings that we have and stuff, are creating a lot of pollution. So I can understand the reasons for this project. One of my concerns is if you were to take a drone with LiDAR and really take a good survey of the areas that you want to work in, you might find that there's a lot of tributaries and streams and stuff. So Robert's point about like when you're digging streets up and you're putting them back together, how you construct them and how well is going to speak to, sinkholes and potholes and stuff. Then my next concern is your time frame, along with I don't know if you're familiar with the Metro North MTA project that they want to do, like Amtrak,
Yes.
like with the Amtrak lines and stuff. I can understand upgrading the grid because Amtrak constantly complains about signal issues, which means there might be a power problem with them. I'm no expert on this. So would this be done at the same time in conjunction with that project? Or yours is like after the Metro North?
I know which project you're referring to. I don't know the details of their particular schedule.
I
We
don't
are
remember.
a separate project, but if there is a recommendation that we check in with them and get a little bit more information, and that's something we're happy to do, to find
Yeah.
out what that schedule is.
Because that's going to create a lot of havoc, you know, with the construction along the corridor that they want to work in. So that's going to create a lot of disturbance, you know, for all the residents and all the
Sure.
businesses, which is a large area between Co-op City and where Hunts Point is. So if you're going to be working at the same time, I mean, how much more construction are we supposed to deal with as a community? It's going to become pretty much unlivable, you know, for a lot of us. It's just, I'm just hoping that your time frame is not the same as theirs. Like hopefully they'll get theirs done, or you'll get yours done before they do, because I mean, I can't even imagine trying to commute. You know,
Sure.
it's a
Thank
mess.
Yeah, we'll take that back, Kay, and take a look on to see what else we can find out about their scheduling.
Yeah, that would be, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. I had
Sure.
another question, but I
Okay.
can't remember it at this time. Thank
Camelia?
you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Camelia.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Shannon, thank you so much. My name is Camelia Tepelus. I'm running the Morris Park Business Improvement District, which is about sort of 2 blocks away. It's a commercial corridor, 2 blocks away from Tremont, where your project is ending, right? So I kind of wanted to pick your brain about something, but first let me just say to everybody, this is a highly specialized project, so there will be a lot of approvals and permitting steps that they will have to go through in order to minimize all impacts in relation to all your concerns, which are very valid concerns. I mean, we all know all the sinkholes that we are having. This goes underwater, all these kind of things, but these are highly specialized people, and it's actually very fortunate for the Bronx that it ends in the Bronx, because this will allow expansion of this capacity of energy transmission that I think she made an excellent point. I mean, back in the 60s, 70s, people were having, I don't know, 1 TV and 1 fridge, right? Like 2 things to plug in the wall. But today we are plugging like 25 devices I think I have in my home with 2 kids and like all the electronics and everything. So it's very clear that there is a high need for this project. But Shannon, my question was in terms of your picture, you know, that where you were showing kind of that you do transmission, but then how that connects to individual people's homes or businesses or buildings. I mean, on Morris Park Avenue, I have the situation where half of my corridor, I have underground lines, you know, on metallic DOT and poles. So the sky is clear, sort of say. But on the other half, I have wooden cornered poles that are cluttered with transformers and boxes. It's like a village in the 20s. It looks horrible. There are power lines and a jungle of cables along Morris Park, across Morris Park on the east side. So I guess my question is to you long term. To whom can I speak? How can I put in place a project where I make the east side of Morris Park Avenue the same, looking more modern with clear sky, not a jungle of wires above the roadway, so that we have modern underground wires and not the ugly wooden poles. Right in front of Petsy Pizzeria, one of the pizza places in Morris Park, now they had to change, like there's one of these ugly wooden poles that's been there for decades. They have to change whatever box. Now they installed a second wooden pole right next to the old one. It looks so ugly and terrible. Can you just please advise me sort of on your understanding on how I could go about this? I understand it's probably at state level, and I'm talking about corner at like city level, but if in some way I can kind of help modernize and advocate both with the community boards and with my electeds in order to clear the sky on the east side of Morris Park Avenue, I would really appreciate your thinking. Thank you.
Sure. And I would say for that is likely the distribution system. So that would probably be in this case Con Edison, but we could kind of look at that a little bit more and see if there's additional information we can provide with some specifics.
Thank you. I would appreciate if it's okay to ask for Jeremy or Cynthia for your email so that I can connect you offline later. Yes, thank you.
That's great.
I thank you so much, Anna.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I think we also have to remember the Bronx was part swamp, right? So, especially the Co-op City area. So when it comes to, like she mentioned, the wires and the poles and how everything is kind of designed, there's really nothing that you could possibly do. Right? I mean, as stuff has, changed and evolved, maybe, but that's millions of dollars of work to take those poles down and to start putting everything under the ground. I don't think you want to disturb the ground that much with all of the piping and all of the wiring. Because again, we have to remember that the Bronx is part swamp. And like you mentioned with sinkholes, I think that's what we are kind of catching now, is because we put a lot of weight on the ground. So we just gotta be mindful. Again, it's environmental stuff, it's engineering stuff. It's a very specific,
There's
Now-
also a problem though with underground wires. All right, Riverdale has underground wires where the speaker lives. And with the snow, when the snow comes and the salt gets into these underground transformers and blows them out. I've seen it because I lived in Riverdale for a while too. So underground is good, but not in the winter, because the winter, the snow and
Ice.
the transformers get blown out.
But the only thing that I want to say is that our streets are already being bombarded with all of this, whatever Con Ed or whoever is digging up all this. I mean, it's all through the Bronx, and they don't put things back.
Together.
They don't put things back quick enough. I'm not gonna say
more
neighborhoods,
about
I'm not gonna say neighborhoods, but I'm just saying, in certain areas, they're digging up all over. And the traffic can't get through, the drivers can't get through, and we're trying to do whatever we can to be mindful of the pedestrians, but they don't fix things back
The
in
way
a
it was.
timely fashion.
And they don't put it back.
Or the way
And
it
then-
was.
and then-
Well, let me say this. By the way, my name is Jamal Wilkerson. I'm with New York Transco, and I'm also the former chief of staff to Speaker Adrian Adams from the City Council. So I know how the infrastructure projects and I'm from Queens. Bottom line, so infrastructure projects can be a headache at the end of the day. Doesn't matter what kind of infrastructure project it is. It could be a headache, but I can honestly say that this is the first company that I know of. And I'm not saying that's just because I'm working for them, but honestly, to say 2 years in advance, I'm going to speak to the community and tell you, a lot of times stuff just pops up. Let's be honest. You look outside your door, where did this come from? Where does that come from? Why are they doing this? We weren't informed as a community. So in this case, what we're trying to do at this point and at this juncture is to actually inform the community, hey, this is the project that's going on. The reason we're having this project is because we haven't had an upgrade since the 1980s. We understand it was 2003 that they had that major blackout, and so forth. Because at the time I was working in Jersey, I get off and I see nothing, everything out, all the power, and I had to walk from Manhattan into Queens trying to get back. So, and that was the first time, honestly, I had ever heard of an electric grid, any of those things.
I had to
So-
walk from Manhattan to the Bronx.
Right. So you get what I'm saying. So honestly, this is an upgrade that honestly needs to happen. Now, all your concerns are very reasonable. They're reasonable concerns, but we don't control, when I'm hearing the billing, we don't control the billing of Con Edison. That's not something that this project controls. But what we do handle is strictly the transmission lines, like she was saying. We're also not going to be in one spot for 4 years. So it's not going to be, hey, we're right here for 4 years. No, we have to move this project along because it's 90 miles of this project. Right. So we have to step by step. Now, I can't say where we're starting and where it's going to be ending, but I can say, hey, it is going through Suffolk County. It's going through Nassau County, which is going to take the brunt of it. It's going through the Bronx, obviously. It's going through parts of Queens and going into Westchester County. So every part of this area gets hit to an extent. So this may not get the major part of all the work, which is good. But it is going to get some of the work. Parts of Queens has to get some of the work too, and so forth. But again, just to address the concerns, reasonable, but understand we don't control the pricing of the building for Con Ed. I wish we did, because maybe I could get a little bit off my bill, but we don't. But it is a necessary project, as they say, a necessary evil to be handled. But and the other thing I'll say is this: when it comes to making sure that things are actually placed back better or the way that they were, that is also something that we have to do. It has to be maintained. It has to be put back in place.
The way it was.
Correct. So, which is why we're doing the studies that we're doing right now. Currently, we're trying to be as efficient as possible and make sure that we know what we're doing. There's still a lot that has to be handled on our side, and we're still waiting on certain approvals and so forth. Like I said, Article 7 is going to take a while. It's a 6,000-page report from us. It has to be reviewed. It has to be scrutinized, and even the routing is preliminary, so it's not set in stone just yet. So we're trying to figure out what's the best way.
Thank you.
Just real quick. So this project is going through, so you're just asking what is the feedback and the input from the community about this?
We want the feedback, yes. We want the feedback and so forth. But we're hopeful that everything can be as smooth as possible, because again, I know what it's like to be kind of jammed up.
Exactly. We need to move on. I just want to finish, just an observation. The work that was done on 153rd Street when you're going down into the exterior wall area, that one particular, it's an area that every year, the same sinkholes pop up, the same thing, it's substandard material that's being used. So my question is, the budget that's going to be expended on this project, how will it be ensured that it will come in on time and in the budget, whatever's allocated to it, and it doesn't get extended or outside of the budget? How would you do that?
So
And
I can answer that.
on.
Yeah, so we have cost caps on the project. So we have to stay within, certain pricing, certain expenditures, and that will be monitored. We can be penalized if we don't. And same thing with the in-service date. That's a required date that we have to put the project in service. This is a little different than I'd say your average infrastructure project. There are a lot of sticks to make sure that we deliver on time, on budget, and safely.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we've got a
Question.
really
No,
got
hold on, question.
Yes.
Since this is affecting the streets, why is this not in the transportation committee?
Good question.
I'm assuming that they're gonna.
Yeah.
They'll bring it to
Committee as well.
Yeah.
We can.
They're gonna bring it to
that
them.
up. Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
And your input, your presentation. We'll definitely be connecting, once again to touch base with hopefully a wider audience. So it's appreciated.
No, thank you.
One more thing, I realize, there are multiple parts to this project, and I know that you can only answer one. And I appreciate the fact that you guys came to let us know 2 years, 3 years in advance. I think the problem that we have as community boards is that when things are presented to us, they're presented halfway. And there's always questions, right? So like when we're doing housing, we're brought in one part. One part is explained to us, but there's a whole other administrative part to it that's never talked about. And it's like, trust the agencies. So all we're saying as the community board is we recognize that you don't have answers to that, but we need answers, right? So you can go back to the powers that be and just letting one ask is that the community board is saying they have additional questions. So any agencies that are going to affect this project or touch this project, they need to answer some part of those questions, because that's a concern.
No, we definitely want to keep in contact with all parties involved, stakeholders. That's why we're doing this so early. And this way, it's like, hey, if you have a question, you can always reach out. Same thing, we're always going to come back and touch base, hey, telling you the progress on what's going on, which is key. We have to keep you involved. So this way, because nothing worse than a whole bunch of folks coming back to the community board with questions saying, and you don't even have even a slither of an answer. So at least this is the beginning of a dialogue.
If we weren't coming here from the sanitation department, we would have never even become a part of what.
Know what's going on.
But we are making a commitment to continually come back to not only this board, but to the other boards that will be affected by this particular project. But not only the community boards, but other stakeholders as well, whether they be the local elected officials, whether they be the bids, whether they be a community and civic organizations. That is the commitment to this project, to properly communicate with everyone that will potentially be impacted, but not only just say, hey, this is what we're doing, and then that's it. But it's like, this is what we're doing. This is the mandate that we have by the state to retrofit, our electric transmission lines. But at the same time, this is our proposal. Okay, your community, who should we be speaking to? Two, your questions. What is it that your concerns are? Is there an economic incentive for this project? Will Bronxites obtain jobs? Will Bronx companies obtain jobs? What are the environmental impacts, to the marine life when we're going, within the creek and in the river? What's the impact to the park in terms of, the people utilizing the park, understanding that you're going to be there during off-peak hours, but what is the true impact? And then once you're done, how would that look afterwards? And we've made a commitment to restore it to as is, or even better to where we found it. So the idea here is to always communicate with you, and to your point, ma'am, it may be an answer that one may not like, but it's an answer that we're going to say to you that is an honest answer, but we're going to constantly communicate with you. And we want that feedback. So maybe there is room for us to tailor what we're doing. Maybe there is room for us to, think about different types of things that we can do to, look at that, incentive. Incentive is a big word. It's in terms of, when I mean big word, I mean, it could encompass anything, whether it's like a toy drive or a Thanksgiving drive, what are those? And I'm just throwing that out to throw it out. I'm not saying that that's what we're doing, just using it as an example. But I say all that to say that our commitment is to always communicate with not only this board, with everyone within the communities that we touch, whether it's a civic community board, etc. Religious organizations as well.
We appreciate that.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jose Rodriguez. Sorry. I don't work for Propel or Transco. I work for both St. John's, and we represent the company, and we, bringing them to stakeholders so that they can talk to them.
Thank you.
Can you get them next one? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move the agenda. Like I said, we thank everyone for coming. Thank you. Thank you for this. So that we can kind of get out of here in the next 5 minutes. Now believing only our meetings. So we have no old business, we have no motions, the new business. So we should all be aware that the mayor has the new bins, the garbage bins, right? So we have to have those bins by November 12th, right? And I believe when I did a little research, they're like $56, about $50. So we're gonna try to get someone from sanitation to come in next month, to bring literature about it, maybe some order forms, maybe we can do something where we can open the community board up to have community members come in, and try to get their bins before things are sold out, because it's a hard cutoff and we don't want anyone to get fined. So we just have to make sure that we follow to whatever. There are 3 bins. I think there's the recycling, there's the green bin, and there's a black bin, I believe.
Well, I think the only one you need right
is the
now
garbage,
is the trash.
it's the trash.
Trash.
So I'm gonna try to get as much information and then send it over to Jeremy so that he can just, send it out to all. But we really do need to pay attention to that, because that's important.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So the only other thing on the agenda that wasn't addressed is the committee chair election. We did not have a quorum this evening,
Yes, so
so
we can't.
hopefully by
Next.
the next meeting, this committee will have a chair and a co-chair.
That's right.
If there's nothing else,
This is the
Sanitation.
yes, yes.
And environmental.
Yes. Yes.
There's no chair and no coach.
Not right now.
Embarrassed. No,
No, it's okay. It's okay.
That's it tonight because I wanted to speak with somebody from sanitation. The last time I was here, I was lucky that in New York City we had the best, but, there's a property, on Burke Avenue and it's constantly being dumped on, it's constantly being, people working on it, people, having cars, fixing cars, leaving cars. So they're making money illegal working and leaving their garbage there, and we have to pick it up, we're getting hit, we're getting fined. Burke between Baltic and Baton.
As I say,
It's they're working on that route.
They're working on Group Avenue,
They're working on, well, they have
they have no legal
Cars.
parts are
group and,
gone through.
Group and Burke, between Glen and Burke.
oh, okay, I know what you're talking. Next to the Seventh Day Adventist.
Yeah,
Church side here.
Yeah,
Okay.
so right there, so.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot of illegal dumping, people are fixing cars.
Even on Boston Road and
Where with the amicus, I mean, the
Yeah.
BP,
Oil zone.
the BP
the
station.
zone.
I think that's like kind of the new thing, right? And I've noticed that since COVID. Is that a lot of
The
illegal
island
mechanics,
is
even on my block. So,
The island, the street.
Right.
yeah,
So
I don't know if that's
the
sanitation.
thing that's disturbing me is, the guys that work, they fix, and then they leave all the stuff, they leave the garbage, we get the tickets.
Right. Okay.
Thank you so very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
See you soon. What's your last name?
Wilkerson, Jamal.
Jamal Wilkins.
Thank you.
Have you filled out, Jess, at the district manager?
I'm gonna have to finish it.
Send
Thank you so much.
That name sound
He's the district manager,
ring.
and then he will find out.
And the
Really?
reason why
It
I'm here
rings.
is because this lady that also feeds cats. Right, may I have one of your cards?
1 second.
Oh.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to adjourn the meeting 8:14 p.m. And thank you all for your time. Any objections to adjourning? Thank you. 8:14 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.
Night, everyone.